There comes a moment when the mask finally cracks, when the narcissist's charm no longer hypnotizes, when their lies no longer land. It's the moment the power shifts. The hunter becomes the haunted. You see, a narcissist's downfall doesn't happen all at once. It unravels in levels, each one more poetic than the last. And if you've ever been their target, every stage of their collapse feels like divine justice written by life itself. There comes a moment in every survivor's journey when they finally see it, the crack in the mask. For so long, the narcissist's charm felt flawless, their confidence intoxicating, their certainty unshakable. They knew exactly what to say to make you doubt yourself and exactly how to twist the truth to make themselves appear blameless. But beneath that polished performance lies something fragile, something fake. And when that mask begins to fracture, even slightly, it's not just a small slip, it's the beginning of their undoing. The mask of a narcissist is not just an act, it's their survival mechanism. It's how they navigate a world they secretly feel unworthy of. They construct this false self, one that's superior, perfect, always right, to hide the truth that deep down they are terrified of being ordinary, rejected, or unseen. Their arrogance isn't confidence, it's camouflage. Every compliment they demand, every person they manipulate, every boundary they cross is an attempt to protect the fragile ego hiding beneath the surface. But here's the beautiful irony. The very thing they create to protect themselves becomes their prison. Because keeping that mask intact requires endless energy, constant performance, constant lies, constant pretending, and no one can perform forever. Eventually, truth, all patient and quiet, starts to seep through the cracks. Maybe it's a small inconsistency in their story. Maybe it's a moment when their charm slips and you see the coldness in their eyes. Maybe it's when you stop apologizing for things that weren't your fault. That's when the mask begins to shatter. Slowly at first, then all at once. And the narcissist can't stand it. They scramble to repair it, projecting blame, creating chaos, rewriting history, anything to make you believe the illusion again. But once you've seen behind the curtain, you can't unsee it. Their words start to sound hollow. Their power begins to fade. You realize that the version of them you fell for never really existed. For the narcissist, this is the beginning of the downfall, because their greatest fear isn't losing you. It's losing control over how you see them. When their mask fails, so does their ability to manipulate, and when they can no longer control your perception, they lose the very supply that keeps their ego alive. That's why they react with such rage when exposed, because exposure means death to the false self they've spent their entire life protecting. But for you, this moment is sacred. The crack in their mask is the light breaking through your darkness. It's the universe showing you the truth, that their power was always an illusion, that your empathy was never weakness, and that clarity is your greatest weapon. You stop chasing their approval and start reclaiming your peace. The narcissist may see this as their world falling apart, but for you, it's the moment yours begins to rebuild. Their downfall starts where your healing begins, and that's the most satisfying truth of all. Control is the heartbeat of a narcissist's existence. It's not just something they want, it's what they need to feel alive. Every interaction, every word, every emotion they display is designed to keep them in command of the narrative. They control through charm, through guilt, through fear, through silence. It's how they make you question your reality and keep you dancing in circles around their approval. But what happens when that control begins to slip? When the strings they've been pulling no longer move you? That's when the downfall begins to take shape. Quiet at first, then catastrophic. At the beginning, a narcissist's control feels invisible. You don't even realize it's happening because they make it seem like love, like protection, like they're guiding you towards something better. They say things like, "I just care about you," or "I know what's best for you," but underneath those words is a deeper motive, domination. They need to be the center, the authority, the one who decides how you see yourself. Their validation becomes your compass. And once you're trained to seek it, they tighten their grip. But nothing exposes a narcissist faster than someone who stops responding to their control. Maybe you start setting boundaries. Maybe you stop explaining yourself. Maybe you finally say no. To you, it feels like reclaiming your strength. To them, it feels like betrayal. Because the narcissist doesn't just lose a person, they lose the control that defined their identity. That's why when you stop playing their game, they start to panic. The calm, charming mask cracks into frustration. The fake humility turns to rage. They'll gaslight harder, guilt trip deeper, or play the victim more convincingly than ever before, all in a desperate attempt to pull you back into their orbit. But here's the truth they can't accept. Control was never real power. It was dependent. Disguised as dominance. The narcissist's so-called control only works when you give it permission, when you believe the lies, when you bend to their emotional gravity. The moment you stop feeding that illusion, their empire begins to crumble. You can see it in their eyes, the confusion, the disbelief, the desperation. They'll try to provoke you, to drag you back into arguments, to make you prove yourself again. But you've already stepped outside the frame of their control, and once you do, they have no idea who to be. Losing control exposes what they've always been running from: emptiness. Without someone to manipulate, they're forced to face their own reflection. And what they see there terrifies them. A person with no true self, no genuine connection, no love that isn't transactional. It's not just the loss of you that breaks them, it's the loss of the illusion that they were ever powerful. And for you, that's the quiet victory, because you don't need to fight them anymore. You just stop reacting, and the tower they built on fear begins to collapse. The narcissist loses control, and you finally regain yours. Exposure is the moment every narcissist dreads. The unraveling of the carefully woven web of lies they've spent years constructing. Their power doesn't come from truth. It comes from illusion. They survive by crafting stories that make them the hero, the victim, or the misunderstood genius. They thrive in the fog of confusion they create because as long as you're uncertain, they remain in control. But when the fog lifts, when people start to see the patterns and connect the dots, their kingdom begins to crumble. Not with a dramatic explosion, but with a slow, humiliating unraveling that they cannot stop. At first, the exposure is subtle. Maybe a friend they once charmed starts questioning their inconsistencies. Maybe someone they smeared behind your back learns the truth. Maybe the people they once manipulated begin to share stories, realizing how eerily similar their experiences are. Narcissists depend on isolation, dividing their targets, controlling the narrative, making sure no one compares notes. But once people start talking, the spell breaks. The narcissist's biggest weapon, the image they've built, starts to corrode. You'll notice their desperation in this stage. They become frantic to rewrite the story. Suddenly, they're the victim of betrayal, the misunderstood soul, the one who tried their best but was treated unfairly. They'll spin tales to protect their reputation, painting anyone who exposes them as bitter, unstable, or cruel. But deep down, they know the truth. The mask is slipping in public now, not just in private. And the people they used to manipulate with ease are beginning to see them for who they really are. Isolation follows exposure like a shadow. One by one, the people they once used start stepping back. The friends who once defended them go silent. The admirers who once praised them lose interest. The narcissist who once thrived on admiration now feels the cold sting of indifference. It's not just that they're being rejected, it's that their audience is gone. Without attention, without reaction, without control, they are left alone with themselves, and that's their worst nightmare. You see, narcissists fear being unseen more than they fear being hated. Hatred still gives them energy, like it still means they matter. But indifference, silence, that's the kind of punishment they can't endure. Because when no one believes their lies anymore, when no one listens to their stories, they're forced to confront the emptiness they've been running from all along. For you, witnessing this stage can feel strangely satisfying. Not because of revenge, but because truth finally stands tall on its own. You no longer need to defend yourself. Reality does that for you. The same people who once doubted you now see what you always knew. And as the narcissist's web collapses, you realize something profound. You never needed to expose them. You just needed to live in your truth long enough for their lies to reveal themselves. Exposure and isolation don't just mark their downfall. They mark your freedom. When the narcissist's mask has fallen, when their control has slipped, and when their lies have been exposed, something deeper begins to happen. Something they can no longer escape. It's the collapse of the false identity they've spent their entire life protecting. This is the identity crisis, the stage of their downfall that cuts the deepest. Because without someone to manipulate, without the admiration that fuels them, And without the illusion that they are superior, the narcissist is left face to face with the one person they've been running from all along, themselves. The narcissist's identity is built like a house of mirrors. Every reflection depends on who's standing in front of them. Around one person, they're the victim. Around another, they're the hero. With someone else, they might be the genius or the martyr, but take away the audience and all those reflections disappear. There's no applause, no validation, no control. And suddenly, the narcissist doesn't know who they are. The person they've been pretending to be begins to dissolve, and what's left behind is emptiness, raw, unfiltered, and terrifying. This emptiness has always been there, buried deep beneath layers of pride and denial. But when the distractions fade, the silence becomes unbearable. They start to feel the weight of their own hollowness. That's why you'll often see a narcissist frantically trying to reinvent themselves during this stage. They might seek out new people to impress, new causes to attach themselves to, or new personas to wear. But none of it fits anymore. The old manipulations don't work, the old charm feels forced, and the old lies sound tired even to their own ears. It's in this stage that you might see the cracks turn into collapse. They'll spiral through confusion, anger, self-pity, and denial, sometimes all in the same breath. Their once grand confidence turns into insecurity. Their arrogance transforms into desperation. They start to lose touch with reality because the world no longer mirrors back the image they've created. The narcissist's worst fear isn't just exposure, it's irrelevance. And when their identity no longer holds power over anyone, they begin to crumble internally. For you, witnessing this stage is both painful and liberating. Painful because you once believed in the image they sold you, the charismatic leader, the loving partner, the confident friend. But liberating because now you see it was never real. The identity they're losing was never truth, it was performance. And when that performance ends, you can finally step out of the story they wrote for you. The narcissist's identity crisis is not just their downfall, it's their reckoning. It's the moment life forces them to look into the mirror without illusion. But the reflection staring back is not the powerful figure they once pretended to be. It's the frightened child underneath, the one who never learned how to love or be loved without control. Their identity crumbles, and yours finally begins to rise. When the mask has shattered, the control is gone, the lies have been exposed, and the false identity has collapsed, the narcissist enters the most painful stage of all, the emotional implosion. This is the point where their carefully constructed world caves in from the inside. Everything they built to hide their emptiness begins to turn against them. The charm that once drew people in no longer works. The manipulation that once gave them power only creates distance, and the self-importance that once made them feel invincible now isolates them completely. The applause has stopped, the audience has left, and for the first time they are left alone with the silence of their own mind, and that silence terrifies them. A narcissist's inner world is a battlefield. Beneath their arrogance lies shame, and beneath that shame lies fear. A deep, gnawing fear of being insignificant. During the emotional implosion, that fear takes over. They start to feel what they've spent their entire life avoiding: rejection, humiliation, and worthlessness. Without anyone left to project their pain onto, the emotions they've suppressed for years begin to surface all at once. They rage at the world, at the people who saw through them, and at the universe for daring to strip away their illusion of control. But beneath that rage is despair. A helplessness they can't admit, because to admit it would mean accepting that they were never as powerful as they pretended to be. You might see them cycling rapidly between emotions, one moment furious, the next tearful, then numb. They'll try to reassert dominance, reach out to former victims, or start new manipulations, but each attempt fails faster than the last. People have learned. The cycle no longer works, and that's when the narcissist begins to implode completely. They may isolate themselves, spiral into bitterness, or even create elaborate fantasies just to escape the pain of reality. But no matter how much they deny it, they can feel it, the weight of their own emptiness pressing down, louder than ever before. This is where the narcissist experiences what could be called their dark night of the soul, though it's rarely transformative for them. Unlike genuine self-awareness, which leads to healing, the narcissist's implosion often leads to blame and self-pity. They tell themselves that everyone turned against them, that they were betrayed, misunderstood, or victimized. It's their way of avoiding the truth, that their downfall wasn't caused by others, but by the lies they built their life upon. For you, witnessing this stage can feel strangely quiet. You don't need revenge. You don't need to prove anything. Life itself has taken over the work of justice. The narcissist's emotional implosion is not something you caused. It's the natural consequence of their own choices. And as they sink deeper into the chaos of their own making, you realize that the silence that torments them is the same silence that heals you. Their downfall is internal, but your freedom is absolute. The final stage of a narcissist's downfall is not about them at all. It's about you. It's about your liberation, your healing, your quiet return to peace after the storm. For so long, your life revolved around surviving their chaos. You measured your worth through their moods, your value through their attention, your happiness through their approval. They made you question your intuition, silence your voice, and forget the strength that once defined you. But when the narcissist finally falls, when their power over you dissolves, something extraordinary happens. You begin to remember who you are. Freedom after narcissistic abuse isn't loud. It doesn't look like revenge or triumph. It begins in stillness, in those small, sacred moments when you realize you're no longer walking on eggshells, when you can breathe without waiting for the next outburst, when you can smile without fear of being punished for it. At first, it feels unfamiliar, almost fragile, as if peace is something you have to learn how to trust again. But with time, that peace begins to grow roots. You start to see that your healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself you had to hide to survive. The narcissist's downfall creates a void, and in that space, you finally have room to rebuild. You rediscover the strength in your boundaries, the clarity in your intuition, and the quiet power of self-respect. Where there was once anxiety, there is now awareness. Where there was once self-doubt, there is now wisdom. Every scar becomes a story of resilience, a reminder that you faced manipulation and walked out stronger. You realize that your empathy, once used against you, is not your weakness. It's your superpower. It's what makes you human in a way the narcissist could never understand. And while the narcissist may continue their cycle with new victims, their downfall is permanent in one profound way. They can no longer control you. Their words no longer pierce. Their presence no longer shakes you. Their opinion no longer defines you. That's the kind of freedom no revenge could ever match. You no longer need to see them suffer to feel satisfied. The true victory is your peace, your detachment, your decision to rise. There will come a day when you think about them and feel nothing. No anger, no sadness, no longing, just neutrality. That's when you'll know you've won. Because while they remain trapped in their endless loop of ego and emptiness, you've stepped into a life built on authenticity and truth. The narcissist's downfall may look like their destruction, but in reality, it's your rebirth. The very pain they caused becomes the foundation of your transformation. Their loss of control becomes your reclaiming of power. Their silence becomes your serenity. And their darkness, once your prison, becomes the contrast that makes your light shine even brighter.